From the beginning of time, humans have harnessed the power of the wind to traverse the waters of the world by boat. Sailboats are one of the world's oldest forms of man-made transportation. One of the oldest images of a boat is featured on hieroglyphs in the ancient temples and pyramids of Egypt. In the Bahamas, every chapter of our history begins with the fact that someone from somewhere came to these islands by boat. The first inhabitants of the Bahamas, the Lucayan Indians, Christopher Columbus, the Loyalists who landed on Abaco, the Lutheran adventurers seeking religious freedom, the pirates who made these islands their base of operations, the African slaves who were shipped here as forced labor for the plantations of the colonies, all came by boat. International and inter-island trade was also facilitated by sailboats. Captains transporting their goods from the islands to New Providence would often race each other on the way home. Over time, as competition grew, builders would tweak the design of these boats to make them faster. Wives and families would line the shores to watch the boats coming in to see who was the fastest. These were the first regattas. Races were formalized into the sloop sailing regattas we now know. Rules were adopted from international sailing. On the world stage, the Bahamas had begun to make a name for itself in the sport of sailing. In 1964, the small colony in the Caribbean sat atop the sailing world when Sir Durward Knowles and Cecil Cook won gold at the Tokyo Olympics. Even today, most Bahamians carry around a memento of our affinity for sailing. Between then and now, the sport of sailing has generated a lot of history, some of which we'll begin to talk about tonight.
It's regatta time again. No, we wish it was, but good evening and welcome to the story of sailing, a five-part educational discussion on the sport that many may say defines us as Bahamians. As Kelsey pointed out, tonight's show will focus on the history of the sport of sailing and the birth of regattas. This program is a production of the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources in conjunction with the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas. Our hope is by the time we're done, more of you will be up to date on the sport of sailing in the Bahamas. Joining me will be Kelsey Johnson, but we're not alone. We are starting the conversation off talking about sloop sailing. Joining me on the set tonight, race organizer and coordinator at National Family Island Regatta Hall of Famer, Mr. Stafford and Bristol.
And also joining us tonight, he's a boat owner, a super sailing fan, and the best announcer at the best of the best regatta. You know him as Rev, but we know him as the Sailing Rev. His name, Reverend Dr. Philip McPhee.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Thank you all.
Also joining us via Zoom is scholar, historian, and author of the new soon-to-be-released book, Masters of the Sea, Patricia Glinton McCullers. Welcome to the story of sailing.
Thank you.
And good evening once again. Tell us, for those who do not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I have to start off by saying I love the Bahamas. I love my home. I'm a Bahamian. Was born in the heartland, Cat Island at Port Howe, and have spent most of my life, in my adult life, in researching things about our country and writing them, because I'm always afraid that so much is being lost because, we've been told we're a small country, therefore unimportant in the world, but that's not so at all. The Bahamas has produced very clever people, very clever institutions and all of this, and I'm so glad that the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources decided to do this project, because I discovered so many wonderful things, so many skilled people, dedicated people to something that should be the national sport of the Bahamas.
Tell us what you have been up to and what led you to writing this book.
I have been, as I say, very much involved in writing. I continue to do. I was both a lecturer and an administrator at the College of the Bahamas, UB now. And I have written, of course, academic papers, always on my home, how it relates to the rest of the world, because you tend to be very insular when you live in an archipelago. But the Bahamas has been at the crossroads of so many important things in history, but most Bahamians, I fear, don't know that. I've written books, for example, to preserve the folk telling tradition. I've written straight history and a novel. I write poetry. I have written in all genre. My job involves more commercial writing, speech writing, that kind of thing, writing advertising and so, but my private time is totally devoted to writing about the Bahamas, getting a truer picture of our country out there to the world. And there's a lot of good story to tell.
So tell us, what did you...
Regatta, of course, is one of them, sailing in the Bahamas.
So tell us, what did you
And,
learn about writing about masters of the sea?
Yeah, well, great, because the thing is, because of my background, I was going to put this in its widest context. These things don't just happen. Certain things have to come together. For example, sea. You couldn't help but sail. We live in an archipelago. The island farthest away from the capital, you're talking about 500 miles to get there. And so Inagua, for example, was closer to Cuba. People used to go shopping in Cuba. To get to Nassau to get help. Sometimes if you were becalmed, it could take a month to get from way down south. And believe me, I've seen most of the major communities. I've visited Long Key twice, for example. But you had to have sea. We have a lot of it, about 100,000 square miles of it. So water was a feature of it. In order to get from one place to the other, there were no highways, no airplanes, of course, when the Bahamas was settled for the second time. You had to deal with travel by sea. So that's the first thing. The people who came, it's very important, because when whatever I've seen written about Regatta before, it was always about people who, anybody else but us. But the point is, you had people come from Bermuda who had a same thing. Bermuda is also an archipelago, smaller than ours, but of course they had to have a sailing history in order to get along. But also what is neglected and troubled me greatly is people not realizing that the sailing tradition also comes to us from West Africa. Places like what is now Nigeria, for example, is a riverine. It has a coast, it has rivers. And I discovered, for example, they had regatta way before the Europeans ever settled that area, and for various reasons. So you had water, you had people coming in who sailed. People in the Bahamas have always sailed. The Lucayans, for example, you had to have boat building in order to sail, to get from one part to the other. So you had to develop skills in boat building, for example. You have to have, unless you row, the method of propulsion, moving yourself ahead. You either rode, sculled, or most efficient, especially if you're far away from where you want to go, using wind power, for example. So sail became important. We have to remember that we needed sail makers. We still have sail makers today because these wonderful vessels that the people sail in the regattas have to be built, and they're built by Bahamians. They, in the beginning, and elements of it are still preserved. You had to use native woods, for example, in building, and the regatta rules still say that certain parts, for example, you have to have out of native wood, for example. You had to have people who are often neglected are the boat owners, people who invest in building boats, and they are very much a part of keeping the tradition alive. And so in the book, you'll find that there's a listing, as many as I could find, of boat owners, for example. You know, you will notice too that certain islands, whenever boat building is written about.
We now turn it over now to, thank you so much, Ms. McCollum. Looking forward to the release of that book. We now turn it over to Kelsey Johnson.
Well, you've heard it, and we all know it as regattas, but the official name is sloop sailing. And joining me is Stafford Bristol, who will give us all the rules because it does vary from island to island. So, Stafford, if you could just explain how the rules set up in the National Family Island Regatta and also in the Cat Island Regatta, the Auckland's Regatta. Man, there's so many regattas. What are the rules?
Well, thanks for having me here. The rules are basically the same. When sloop sailing first started in the Bahamas, when I first started sailing 60 plus years ago, we had different rules that we sailed by. We had a regatta called the Empire Day Regatta. That's where we start sailing our dinghy boats in Andros. So every Empire Day we look forward to sailing. And the rules were made up as we go. My father and people like Dr. Marquis' father and all of those guys, they organize regattas just to keep their boats going. Now, what we have now in sailing, we have national rules that governs all of the regattas. We have the same rules for the National Family Island Regatta that we have for the All Andros Regatta. We adopted those rules and we're using the same sailing rules.
Well, with rules comes rivalry and competition, and no one can beat this person on set, trash talking. I think Johnson, the late Johnson, he was one of the best in trash talking. But Rev, it's all about you when it comes to trash talking. If you could just talk about the competition and the rivalry, how is it on the high seas?
Well, thank you so much. Let me thank all of you who have indeed invested in this program today. It's much needed, overdue. But trash talking comes from relationship. It's a conception of having friends, and we develop a variety of individuals who bring out the best in competition. Everybody wants to win, as you're well aware. Everybody cannot win. There's only one winner. And so if you lose, and if you have hard mouth, well, you can take a whole lot of little blows. But sloop sailing unite us, brought us into an atmosphere where we recognize the worth of Bahamians, be it boat builder, boat owner, skipper, or just an ordinary person who is a crew member. So that makes it unique in a very special way. Bahamian sailing is unique. It's different than any type of sailing anywhere else in the world. I looked at a piece the other night where in the Caribbean, there are some who sail by bedding. They pull their anchor and they bed, go out. We sail by pulling our anchors and go on the wind, which makes it a little bit more competitive. The trash talking comes after the race is over. When everybody comes shore, you get beat up. You had hard mode before it started, you get beat up, so you ease your way off Montague. so people won't have an opportunity to tease you
Tease.
and make you feel bad. Someone's gone home crying sometime because we really wanted to win. Sometimes we were so close to the finish line and somebody come beat us to the finish line.
Now, since sloop sailing touches literally every island in the country, who has the best boat owners, the fastest boats, and who are the best?
Starting a war, Kelsey.
Yeah.
Well, let me say this. History will tell you at the initial point of sailing, many of our island people own boats. It was sponging, fishing, and there was a season for it. And that season went on for about 3 to 4 months. After that, we plug up the well. Now, maybe you never heard that terminology. It means that all of the boats had well in it. It means water is in the boat, so you can keep the fish alive. The season ended. We plug up the well, and then we let our boat dry out, and competition started. It usually started with Andros, Ragged Island. But the time came around when these skilled men wanted to have something that was called the Out Island Regatta. That's before the National Family Island Regatta. And those men like Raleigh, my dad, Rupert Knowles, Moxies and Locketts came together as Bahamians and decided to say, look, we're going to see which one of the islands possessed the greatest skill in boat building and the fastest boat. That's how really the Out Island Regatta got started in Exuma, because they view all around the Bahamas, and at that time, Georgetown had the best protected harbor that they knew about, and that's how Georgetown gave birth to the Out Island Regatta.
Well, Fisher, I mean,
We're in a regatta environment here tonight. We have DJ Rev on the turntable. We have some performances also coming up later on in the show, so don't you dare go anywhere. We'll be right back. These two young gentlemen, they're going to be right back with us as well. Welcome back to the story of sailing. Charles Fisher along with Kelsey Johnson, Stafford of Bristol, and the Reverend Dr. Philip Murphy. Do you guys, we have another regatta now, and I can't, how do you, so what has been going on with no regattas happening?
Our boats are rotting. The sailing community really is suffering a little bit in terms of keeping our boat together, because without salt water in our boats really decay very quickly. So we're hoping that our Prime Minister and the Minister responsible for sailing would look into that very seriously, so that we can, after the pandemic is really under great control, see as quick as they can, put us back in the water. But it is difficult because regatta does so much for this country. Junkanoo and regatta, as you know, are very key cultural events. And under the leadership of then Minister responsible for sports, Algernon Allen, he made a combination of regattas and sailing to all of the family islands. You remember, Fisher, we went and get the best drummer, the best bella, and that brought a little bit more excitement to the sloop sailing event, to the family island event. It made the community more aggressive, and then they got an opportunity to see the best in the Saxon, the best in the Valley Boys, and the best in one family, as well as the best in sailing. So that was a unique thing that would happen and brought a whole lot of highlight to the development of sloop sailing in our country.
We now go back to Ms. McCollis and tell us, when will this book be released?
Oh, that is something you need to ask the people at the ministry, the regatta desk. Mr. Burrows, Andrew Burrows, can probably tell you that. But I just want to make one correction to this. You wouldn't believe it, but the first organized regatta, official regatta, took place in this country in 1831 under the Governor James Carmichael Smith, and even gave a prize of a silver cup, for example. And the Bahamas was second in the British Empire after India in creating a regatta. But of course, we know the glorious, you had regattas, as Reverend McPhee said, in all the islands. Cat Island, for example, when the season was done, the working season, you had races, especially on Empire Day, as a special thing. So we have to remember these things. We were doing it for a very long time.
All right, Stafford, thank you so much, Ms. McCollus, for joining us here on the Story of Sailing tonight, and looking forward to the release of that book.
Thank you.
Well, Stafford, I understand we were speaking to Reverend Doctor about what you guys have been up to. I know that there's a chat, so you guys are constantly looking out for one another during this time, this pandemic.
Well, at the beginning of the pandemic, Fisher, we, on the chat, what we were doing is we were having little trash talk on the chat, talking about who boat is the best boat, and when we get back into the water, what we are going to do. And at one time, the guys was just calling me, putting stuff on my phone, saying, Stafford, start the race, man, fire the gun, because I ready to go, and things like that. We do a lot of trash talking on the chat, keeping in contact with each other, keeping each other's spirit up. Because, like was mentioned by Doc, the guys, they are spirited. When you talk about sailing, they just get energized and they're ready to hit the water at any time. They're just waiting for this pandemic to go. And once the pandemic is gone, we'll be flocking out there like birds.
Well, thank you so much. As you heard, the Spirit of Regatta will be live and ready. These boat owners are ready to hit the waters and all of the high seas, from Cat Island to Andros, Exuma. Obviously, I have to put in Exuma, my homeland, Exuma. So we are going to take a break, but I just want to thank you so much, Mr. Stafford, Reverend Dr. Philip McPhee, and as well as Ms. Patricia, who joined us via Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us on this side of the break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We catching crabs, there we go in. Mosquitoes gon' bite tonight.
Welcome back. Well, success in sailing is more than just sloop sailing, and while the Bahamas distinguished itself with the brand of sailing, our first success in the sport came in international sailing. International sailing is being taught in a number of clubs around the country, and Bahamian youth sailors are competing internationally as well. Joining us is sailing national coach and head of the Royal Nassau Sailing Club, Robert Dunkley, and we also have experienced sailing trainer Laurie Lowe. Welcome to the Story of Sailing.
Thank you. It's a pleasure
Thank you.
to be here.
Robert, first of all, how big was the impact of Sedurwood and Cecil Cook on the international scene back in the 60s?
Incredible. It has an incredible impact on all of us as sailors, sailing internationally, and we would all love to come home one day with a gold medal, as Sedurwood did. And I think for many of us, particularly myself, really an idol, somebody we all have looked up to, not only because of his sailing and the great achievements in his sailing, but also as a caring Bahamian and really caring and giving to the community.
And nowadays, we're seeing more youngsters adapt to this new style of sailing, even though it's an old version of sailing.
You're absolutely right. I mean, with the Bahamas National Sailing School, and that's only one of the clubs here in New Providence, and then there are clubs around the islands, a number of the different islands, but we go through 200 youngsters a year. And when Jimmy Lowe, John Lawrence, and Peter Bruce Wasich started the program in 2005, there was a core group of about 30. And today, when we add all the different clubs together, we're probably going through over 400 kids a year. And with that, we've developed, I think, great talent and hopefully the ability soon for the Bahamas to compete again in the Olympics. Already, we're participating in Pan American Games, the Central America Caribbean Games, but we haven't had anybody from the Bahamas since 1996 compete at the Olympic Games.
How is this sailing catching on here in the Bahamas with the youngsters?
Oh, I think it's growing by leaps and bounds. As Robert said, 20 years ago we had about 30 kids in the programs. Now we don't have the capacity to take care of all the kids that are interested, and we have kids in 6 or 8 islands. Obviously, the people in Abaco and Grand Bahamas suffered greatly from Dorian. We're really happy to be able to say that Abaco is back sailing this year. They weren't able to sail last year. Most of their children were out of Abaco because of Dorian. We're worried about Long Island. They're not able to sail, but we're hoping we'll get them sailing again soon. They have the issues with multi-generational families and just not wanting to risk the health of their grandparents by having the kids out sailing. We're fortunate that most of our programs deal with single-handed boats, so we don't have the same issues as many other sports with contact between athletes. It's pretty hard for you to get close within 6 feet of another sailor out on the water in these single-handed boats. We have some double-handed boats for the kids, and those work better for teaching older kids. The problem is with COVID, we're not there yet.
You hosted a major sailing event about 2 years ago, right before the pandemic. How did that help in lifting the sports here in the Bahamas and more youngsters wanting to get involved in this type of sailing?
Yeah, there's nothing like having a major international event where you can see idols come and sail, people that you aspire. You know, it's just like the Olympics in Sir Durwood's. We all aspire to the Olympics. Well, maybe not all of us, but it's a goal for quite a lot of children. And any major international event that you have that brings better sailors, brings kids into the sport. The energy that surrounds a major international event is huge, and you just get such a boost to your kids wanting to come into the sport. And one of the things that we do in the Bahamas Sailing Association with our Optimist class, the introductory class, is we have we followed the sloops. Sloops have their regattas in every island, so we've tried to have our annual nationals in a different island every year. And what this does is it generates business for the island, it generates interest, and it's really good for each of those fleets in those islands once we've had the nationals there.
So I know you're getting set for another major event. What's ahead for the sport now?
Well, for the Optimist class, we have 13 on Optimist Team Bahamas, heading to Mexico for the Optimist North American Championships next week.
How many sailors will be going?
We'll have 13 from the various clubs. Royal Nassau Sailing Club, the Bahamas National Sailing School, and Nassau Yacht Club. And also there's a new club in Eleuthera. So one of the sailors from there will be on that team as well. And then we have Lightwood Key Sailing Club. And they've gone through elimination events, and we're taking the top 13.
And how many girls?
And be 4 girls. We're going to be participating in that.
Wish you guys the best of luck, but you know, regattas is all about performances. Some people go down, they don't even watch the sailing, just like the entertainment. They sit around the DJ booth, and they also like to hear the performance. And guess what? We have a performance in here tonight. I so love to see her perform. Front show, and it's all yours.
What's going on, y'all? We're bringing the regatta straight to y'all TV this time. Right in your front room. Let's go. Keep people business out your mouth. Keep people business out of your mouth. Like the old saying, go my child, teeth and tongue don't fall out. So remember, if a dog could bring you bone, then surely will. So mind what you say and be careful who you're talking to. Miss Mina sitting on a porch with her air in the neighbor yard, waiting to talk. The first thing she hear, that old woman has worked so bad. One day I gone on the porch just to visit she. First thing she can ball out is, you hear what happened to Miss Patsy. She say her husband cheating on her with the young girl down the road. Lord, no, I ain't come for this, cause this is an overload. She could tell him about the outside children and he got one on the way. And that's when I remember what my Grammy said to me. Keep people business out your mouth, keep people business out of your. Like the old saying, go my child, teeth and tongue don't fall out. So remember, if a dog could bring you bone, then so mind what you say and be careful who you're talking to. Come on. Patsy come from, hey, tired of working so late. So she gone inside and settled down and started to fix her one plate. One mind say, Patsy, check the door. She see a big eye looking through the glass. Miss Mean ain't even give her a chance. That old woman is just too. She say, your husband cheating on you with the young girl down the road. You can tell by the look on Patsy's face that woman almost explode. She tell him about the outside children and he got one on the way. And that's when I remember what my Grammy said to me. Keep people business out your mouth, keep people business out of your mouth. Like the old saying, go my child, teeth and tongue don't fall. So remember, if a dog could bring you bone, then surely you would told it too. So mind what you say and be careful who you're talking to. Not important, you know. You gotta remember to keep people business out your mouth. Keep people business out your mouth, y'all. Hey! Let's go. Stay there talking people business. Hope you watching your home. Miss me to go read your Bible. Leave them people alone. You worry about everything Miss Patsy husband is do. Well, I got news for you. Your husband doing it too. Keep people business out of your mouth. Like the old saying, go my child, teeth and tongue don't fall out. If a dog could bring you bone, then surely you would told it too. So mind what you say and be careful who you're talking. Keep people business out your mouth. Keep people business out of your mouth. Like the old saying, go my child, teeth and tongue don't fall out. Remember, if a dog could bring you bone, then surely you would told it too. So mind what you say and be careful who you're talking to.
Good evening, Danny. Mrs. Strawn. Good evening, Mrs. Strawn.
Diabetes, hypertension, and even obesity.
I can't get him full of Good evening, Mrs. Strawn. Make sure your TV's turned off. Mrs. Strawn, can you talk for us?
I got good back.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, thank you. We'll be coming to you soon. Stand by for
Okay,
us.
thank you.
That's Danny.
Okay, let's get a mic check. Start again.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's as far as I could go.
Okay, next.
1, 2, 3. Oh.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody. Thank our resident DJ Rev here. We're now joined by Commodore of the National Family and Regatta, Danny Strong. And Danny, like many, I've really missed regattas. I've really missed coming down to Exuma. Good evening, how are you doing?
Good evening and good evening, Bahamas. I'm happy to be joining the crew this evening to talk about Dave Schaefer sailing in the country.
But first, let's talk about the National Family Regatta. 2 years, 2 years. So what have you guys been doing in that time without regatta there for 2 years?
Well, of course, Charles, it was a tremendous impact to the economy and, of course, the cultural aspect of it. It was a tremendous impact to the people of Exuma, and I think the people throughout the entire country. What the Exumian sailors were doing almost on a weekly basis, on a weekend, they've been sailing the C-class boats here in Georgetown and Elizabeth Harbor. They had the last race last weekend, and they can have another one this upcoming weekend. So they've been keeping busy. They've been keeping their boats in the water.
Speaking about the locals, I know you've heard a lot from the international people that normally come down for this regatta. How are they feeling that we haven't had regatta in 2 years?
Well, they're devastated because they call me, and I've been getting calls constantly. Is the regatta on this year? And all I can tell them, I'm sorry, the regatta is not on. We're still fighting the pandemic. But I gave them assurance that next year, I think once the pandemic is behind us, we will start the regatta next year, April 2022.
We're joined on the set by Reverend Dr. Philip Markfee, Robert Dunkley, and yourself. And we've been talking about the history of sailing and the importance of the sport here in the Bahamas.
Yes, I've listened to what was being said and the book that is being written by Patricia Miolis. But I just want to simply say that, when it comes to sloop sailing, the first organized sloop sailing in the Bahamas was here and organized by the late, great Bobby Simlet and Linton Reed back in 1954. And if you can see in the back of me, the backdrop I have in the back of me, I have a copy of the entire first Regatta magazine in 1954. And I also, it's amazing, I also have the cost of the first regatta back in 1954, 1955. Would you believe that at that time we were having pounds, shillings, and pence? And in the back of me, there's an accounting of the cost of that regatta. The total cost of that regatta back then was 580 pounds, 15 shillings, and 2 pence. And if we were using the prevailing exchange rate at that time, the total regatta of 70 boats cost $1,600. Today, with 75 to 78 boats, the total cost of today's regatta is $400,000. So you can see the involvement of the regatta over the years. I also have in the back of me a copy of the Lady Eve, back in 1954, which shows how the boats were built, how they were rigged. And I also have a picture of a modern day boat in the back of me, and I hope you all can see it. So it's amazing. It's a tremendous story, starting back in 1954. And a lot of people, have to be credited, for keeping the sport alive. One of the things I always like to say to people, the regatta, like Junkanoo, is something that was born here. Like Smokey Robinson said, if you're born here, you're born here. So the National Family Island Regatta was conceived, it was nurtured, and we kept it and brought it to the level that it is today with Reverend Macfrey and all the others, all the various islands, Regatta Island, Exuma, Long Island, Andros, Abaco. And so from a collective effort, we kept the sport to where it is today. And as Rev said, we're anxious to get back on the water. Not only that, the people here in Exuma are rather anxious for the regatta to come back because it means so much economically to the economy of Exuma and also the economy of all the family islands wherever the regattas are being held.
And Dunkley and Markfee, you guys laughed when he said the price of the regattas back then. Your sport is expensive, your side of sailing, and also your side.
That is right. And again, I say hello to the national chairman. When we talk about the regattas, we must remember collectively it was the black Bahamians who wanted to have some excitement in their own nature in terms of boat building and sailing. At that time, Fisher, the white Bahamians were more involved in international sailing. Bobby Simonet, Craig, and all of them, they're the guys who were instrumental in putting the Bahamas on the map internationally. What was key to this whole thing was the white Bahamian never wanted to interfere with the black man's sport. That's why they gave to keep them going, encourage them, but never built a boat to compete against them. Because if they did, obviously, they would build a boat better than we can, rig it better than us, and sail it better than us. But they wanted the black Bahamian to have something to celebrate. And that's what they did. And that's why we must give them that credit, because they did not interfere with the holistic program of sloop sailing in our country. It grew from the poor man, the fisherman, and then eventually to the reverend. But it came to that point where the actual man who had to take his coins, his pennies, Danny talked about the sixpence and the shilling, to build a boat, to go fishing. And then after they have finished their whole tour, they came together, they call up all of the big boys and saying, Rupert, Raleigh, Moxie, McPhee's, and say, look, man, let's go to Georgetown. It's the best place to go. Let's have sailing series. At that time, Andres probably took almost 100 boats to Exuma. In terms of, if you include dinghies, B class, A class, they came there in great numbers. It was a celebration of families, and that's what we really want to see come back and enjoy the whole holistic program of developing sloop sailing in our country.
Well, Mr. Dunkley, we've heard about the economic impact that regattas have on the family islands. If you could just talk about what type of economic impact your sailing events have here in the capital.
The major events we have, I'll use one as an example. The Optimist North American Championships we hosted brought in over $1 million into the tourist industry. And we were asked for statistics, and it does make a big impact. And for the clubs themselves, if the host club, they will also make a fair amount of money out of it. And that filters down to our programs, where our programs include kids out of the communities, government schools, and it filters all the way down to them. So it benefits the economy, but it also really benefits our Bahamian people, our youngsters.
We've also had international sailors who have graced our shores, who've sailed in our waters. If you could just explain how they get to come here and what type of sailing they do.
We have a number of different international classes, and we're talking about Bobby Simonet, and he sailed very successfully for the Bahamas in the 5.5 class. They would have an event here every 2 or 3 years, and there'd be an international event, and those foreigners would come. And as one of them put it, you know, when God put sailing in the world, he meant it to be in Montague Bay. I mean, the Montague Bay impresses people from around the world, and they all want to come back.
A few years ago, we had Mark Holowesco, I think, and his
Correct.
partner. They were competing in an international competition. If you could just give us a little bit more information on how we are able to qualify for those international competitions.
The qualifications for that is really the class itself determines what the qualifications would be. That is a fairly open class, but the wealthier sailors internationally are members of that class, and they have their international events in different locations. Right now they have an event going on in Italy, in Lake Garda. We were hoping to have the 5.5 World Championships here last year. Because of COVID, that didn't happen. But we also have a number of sailors, Gavin McKinney, all right, Mark Holowesco, and a few others, Peter Vlasov being another one, sailing in that class. And both of those, Mark Holowesco and Gavin McKinney, have won the World Championship events one in 2018, the other 2019. So we're still very, very competitive internationally.
What will it take for the Bahamas to get back on the Olympic level?
The Olympic level, it's completely different to the way it was. Up until 1996, it was just the top sailor in that class in the country was able to go. Now countries have to qualify. And for the Bahamas to qualify, it's extremely tough these days. And, but we have young sailors coming up. We were hoping to see Chris Sands, who came through our program, participate in the last Olympics. Unfortunately, he had an injury and had to give up his what we thought was going to be a campaign for him. Right now we have Paul D'Souza, who's come through our program, and he is sailing in the NACRA, which is a catamaran that foils, super fast boat, and he's now started an Olympic campaign. He, along with Paloma Cartwright from Long Island, they're training. And we also have Spencer Cartwright, who again came through our program at Spencer Williams University, and he was the most valuable player award that he received, and we're hoping that he will also be looking to campaign for the next Olympics.
And Mark, before we wrap things up here with our discussion, because we have another 5 more weeks, so very quickly, best of the best.
Well, the best of the best, for sure, got started when I was the consultant to the government, along with Honorable Alfred Gray and Clinton. We had sailors, and Dunkley was there with us also. We had sailors from all over the world who came to sail in our beautiful waters. After they sail in our waters, we introduced them, we showed them our boats. They were excited about it. And they said, wow, it'll be a good thing if the international sailors will have an opportunity to sail our boats. It'll be a first time for them to do it. It will be exciting to see if they still got the artistic gift on our tiller as they would have on their tiller. We had a great opportunity to meet with the minister. He did an outstanding job in giving it the credibility that it could happen. It did happen. The government, we must give them the credit for doing it, and the Ministry of Agriculture did an outstanding job. We pulled it off. It was the biggest event. I know Danny listened good. It was the biggest sailing event for a sloop in the history of this country. We spent a whole lot of money. I guarantee close to, must be nearly $1 million, I believe. We spent a lot of money, but the kind of credit we got, because we went worldwide. The world saw them sailing in our waters, sailing our boats. It was so exciting. It brought attention to the Bahamas. It keep coming and making it to what it ought to be. So we're blessed that it happened, and we thank God that, and we hope it'll happen again very soon.
Before we get into Mr. Stelito, our closing candidate, closing remarks, Danny.
Well, I just want to say I think this is a good start, to talk about the history of regattas in the country, and we have 2 types of sailing, the international sailing and our sloop sailing. And of course, I just want Rev to remember back in the 1990s, the best of the best was held under, the jurisdiction of Minister Allen, when we did in fact have international sailors sailing our sloop in Montague Bay. Ted Turner, the owner of CNN, and I think the Olympic champion at that time sailed against Ted Turner. Ted Turner sailed on the Southern Cross, and all of the international sailors sailed on our sloops. And at the end of the day, Rolly Gray proved to be the best, because Rolly Gray beat them all. We had like about 10 international sailors versus 10 local sailors, and our guys performed magnificently. Our guys showed that we do in fact have the kind of skills to compete internationally. But getting back to what Robert was saying, the fact is you need money in order to reach the Olympics.
The Marlboro Cup, not the best of best.
Well, that's all the time we have now on the high seas. For my captain, Charles Fisher, and co-captain, myself, as well as Reverend and Dr. Philip McPhee and Robert Dunkley, just want to thank you, and Danny Strawn down there in Exuma. What is a regatta and sailing event with an onshore activity? Well, in studio, we have our very own Stalit, who will take us out for show 1.
Yeah, you see, regatta time again, boy. Still in the building. Raking straight. Don't wear your regatta clothes then. Y'all think this is a game, eh? Watch it now. Still. Oh yeah. Man, let me tell you something, boy. Regatta season back in town. Are you ready? Let's go down. Oh, we raking and we scraping. Oh, we raking and we scraping. Man, we raking and we scraping. Oh, we raking and we scraping. Watch it. Oh, wake up early one morning, we jump on the back of the truck. I say me, Terry, and Rico, them, all of we just wake up. Oh, we raking, we scraping, man, we going from house to house. We flat the maypole, the chop on the boys, we chicken. Oh, we raking and we scraping. Oh, we raking and we scraping. Oh, regatta is back again. We tacking and we sailing. Hey! Well, you better get your regatta clothes ready. You better find your regatta pants. We play domino downtown at Freeport bus stop. We go also play in Nassau, Port and Ski Dock. 6 partners, you play star. We go raking scrape Logwood Road, down at John Bar. Man, we raking and we scraping. Oh, we tacking and we sailing. Hey, we raking and we scraping. Oh, we tacking and we sailing. Watch it, boy. I said, dee-da-dee-da-die. From Freeport to Napa, it's regatta time again. Watch it now. Play the music. Oh, from Freeport to Inagua, back to San Salvador. Man, the people, them, they sculling, and they asking out for more. Who's coming regatta time, they party through the night. To my raking scrape live band, they play till morning light. Man, we raking and we scraping. Oh, we tacking and we sailing. Hey, regatta time is back again. Boy, we tacking on the corner tree. Are you ready? Let's go. Hey, I want you to get up and start shaking and whine to the music you're making. Put your hands up high in the air and feel it like you just don't care. If y'all like the party, regatta time, somebody say, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Hey, 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 hey. Oh, we raking and we scraping. Oh, we tacking and we sailing. Man, regatta time is back again. Oh, we tacking and we, hold on now.